This is something I wish someone had handed to me much earlier, is that your identity and your self-worth is not tied to your work, full stop, which for high achievers, that is a real hard sentence to swallow and absorb. Anything that is extrinsically motivating, it triggers a surge of dopamine in the same region of the brain that's associated with drug addiction. Imagine this linear progression and you hit the next milestone, and every time you hit the milestone, the next thought is what's next. And it has to be bigger and it has to be better. There's just no stopping point until there's a health issue. It's either a death in the family. Do whatever you need to do to feel enough and whole as you are without the achievement, without the titles, without the wealth, without all the things. Stop outsourcing your self-worth.
Get ready for the next iteration of you on your path to becoming wealthy. On this show, you'll get the insider's view on wealth creation, the class none of us got taught in school, with my co-host, daughter, and beginning investor, Sophia Bosch. And now, let's get started. Welcome to the Becoming Wealthy podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Bosch, my co-host,
Sophia Bosch.
And we are excited to bring to you today a lady that Sophia actually has been following on Instagram. She's watched her TED Talk, and I am so excited to have her here with us. She is the best-selling author of the book, This Isn't Working. Her name is Meghan French Dunbar. She calls herself the business anthropologist, and she's on a mission to improve businesses for everyone. She's an entrepreneur, a business journalist. She writes for Inc., for Fortune, and she works with companies such as Coach, John Deere, Kate Spade on leadership and culture. And so with that, welcome to the show, Meghan. We are so excited to have you here with us.
I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here. I love the mother-daughter duo. It's just wonderful.
Thank you. So do you want to kick it off with the first question, or you want me to kick it off?
Either way.
Yeah, let us tell you where we're at. So we started our podcast when Sophia was about 16 years old. She's now about to graduate high school. We went through a whole college application process. You know, we've talked about what we've done during the summers to build up, her resume for applications and to have really good content for essays and so on and so forth. We opened actually her response from her number one choice university live here on the show.
Oh, I listened to it.
Yes. And now we are she's going to Boston College. She's 6 weeks, actually 4 weeks of class plus 5 weeks total of class left in her high school career. And as she heads to college, I feel like she survived pretty well the peer pressure of high school. Yeah. But what are some things that you think she can do as far as perhaps listening to her inner voice and with that, continue to discover her identity? There's some values that, of course, she brings from home, but when you go to college and you're for the first time in your life, savoring, that independent life, how can you make sure that you listen to that inner voice, especially in an environment where she's going to be constantly now there's no break from peers, because you go to school now and you come home, but there you're always surrounded by other different influences, good or bad, but what can she do?
Oh my gosh. This is such a good question. And also one I wish I had asked myself at your age, just like it wasn't too long ago. It was like 20 years ago. And I had the extraordinary privilege for the book of getting to interview nearly 100 business leaders. I would say all of them have achieved a certain level of success in the business world, and they all are very happy. They're thriving. They're not burnt out and overwhelmed like so many of us are. And one of the common denominators that I saw through so many of them, especially starting young in their college days, was that they followed what lit them up, not what they felt like they should do, not what was practical. And yes, stability and the financial foundation has to be there. And you can make money on nearly everything. Yeah. Like you bring your magic and your creativity to something, the things that will light you up and keep you going and get you out of bed on the days when work feels really hard are the things that you're drawn to. Caroline Duell, she's the founder of all good skincare, if you've ever like seen their lotions and stuff. And she was studying like herbs and healing in college and created her own major around environmental studies and healing because she was so passionate about it. And then took that passion forward and created a skincare company out of it like 20 years later. So everyone that I saw, it was following what lights you up, not what you should do, and constantly coming back to your values and your purpose, which I think when you're talking about being surrounded by your peers at all times, the thing that I would invite you to do on a regular basis is find a little bit of space, even if it's 10 minutes a day, of just being in quiet, going for a walk, like sitting in your room, journaling, whatever it might be, because if you can't just silence the external noise, you can't listen to the inner voice.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Sophia right now, has decided that she's going to major in something business related. She's thinking about business, finance, but also possibly marketing
or management, something like that.
But what really lights her up, maybe you can share with her.
I love anything in the art world. I love going to galleries, museums. Have always loved that. Love doodling, drawing, painting, whatever that might be. So I'm looking to combine those two.
Yeah. In some way, shape, or form.
And we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And I love what you said. It's something that lights her up, because I think in one of I was reading a little piece of content on, I don't know if it was on Facebook, on your Instagram, where you talked about, that some of the characteristics of people who are happy at work are the people that, like you said, are lit up about something, but they have found meaning, true purpose, and freedom. Can you expand a little bit more on that, perhaps?
Yeah, Daniel Pink in his book Drive, he talks about 3 primary intrinsic motivators. There's purpose, meaning, mastery, learning and getting better and better at something that you're interested in or care about, that kind of constant growth and evolution, and autonomy, freedom. So I took that framework and then listened to all the interviews that I did for the book and looked at all the research on this. And meaning is 100% a pillar of happiness. Mastery, continued growth, of course, what I just said, follow the things that light you up. And when we're talking about autonomy, this was the piece that was constantly missing, especially for me, because my first business, I was passionate about it. It felt like it was impactful, but I didn't give myself the autonomy or the freedom to cultivate my quality of life. And this is something I wish someone had handed to me much earlier, is that your identity and your self-worth is not tied to your work, full stop, which for high achievers, that is a real hard sentence to swallow and absorb. And that your quality of life, the more you cultivate your quality of life, and this is things like deep, meaningful connections with people who light you up, people who fill your cup up. This is doing things that make you happy, pursuing art and going to galleries and doing the things that like light your soul on fire, pursuing things that make you mentally and physically healthy and well. These are the foundational elements of a good life. And this is Harvard's Human Flourishing program. They have all the research on this. They know what makes us flourish. And we compromise nearly all of that for the sake of success at work. And when that is out of balance, that's where you see people spiraling into chronic stress and burnout and undiagnosed health issues. And so it's the cultivation of looking for meaning, following things you're passionate about, and never compromising the quality of life elements to the best of your abilities. And at the least, I talk to a lot of people who say, I'm like in a season of busyness. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. I understand that sometimes we have to be in a season of busyness. Just make sure that the season has an end. Like I have a friend who's been in a season of busyness for a decade. And I'm like, that is no longer a season. That's become a whole situation. So make sure it has an end and constantly come back to things that make you happy because they make you a better leader.
Yeah. And you're so right. I mean, Sophia has probably felt some of that burnout from constant achievement. Like she was like junior
was
year, remember?
It was sophomore year. It was just a whole mess. I think sophomore year, my classes weren't that hard, so I loaded my plate with things outside of school, but then that turned out to be a lot. And then junior year, I cut down on a few, but then school got really hard. Junior year is like your hell year. Because that's when the grades count.
Yep.
For college applications. And then senior year, the first semester senior year, I basically had to drop everything outside of school for a good portion of time because the essays and working on the applications, that was a whole mess.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but
even
it was just like a one thing after another but now I'm doing good.
But once that was done, like she goes into the Christmas break and her body is like, okay,
oh my God, I got
enough.
sick for 2 weeks straight.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise
just
me
constantly. And even there, she recovered, bounced back. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, it was the next thing.
Again.
And so
I was having hair loss. I was having,
from basically this continuous.
I felt it for sure.
Having striving. And I think for like a little bit of like a type A individual, and I don't blame her. It's probably all my fault because I have modeled some of that for her, you know?
Don't you take that on all yourself. Society is doing a lot of this pushing on us. So sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
So I'm like, holy moly, you know, I need to also myself model this a little bit more for her because like you said, this is kind of like the only way I knew how was to like, you know, for over a decade have a situation where you're like constantly in, you know, in building mode and constant expansion mode and not giving yourself time to rest. And when I finally did, and I was forced to, also due to illness, you know, to my first wealth not being there, which is my health, really having to step back and cut back. And now I realize, wow, the quality of my decisions, of the things that I do go for, everything has improved as a result of not forgetting that. But it's very, very easy to fall into what you just mentioned, this achievement, almost like equating that to self-worth.
Yeah.
And
I think when I watched your TED Talk, you said something about it almost being an addiction. And
there's science around this. I mean, when we anticipate a reward, anything that is extrinsically motivating, it triggers a surge of dopamine in the same region of the brain that's associated with drug addiction. And I was a high achiever when I was your age, captain of the soccer team and captain of the basketball team and in all the AP classes and all the things. And it was just the cycle. And then I got to college and was like, well, what am I going to do? I have to I'm going to get 2 degrees in 4 years and I'm going to work full time. And here's my goals. And then I graduated and was like, then you start the career ladder and you imagine this linear progression and you hit the next milestone. And every time you hit the milestone, the next thought is what's next. And it has to be bigger and it has to be better. And there's just no stopping point until there's a health issue or there's always some issue that happens. It's either a death in the family, a health issue, someone getting fired, a business collapsing that forces the stop, which is like a blessing in itself. And what can we do to cultivate wholeness now and not have to force ourselves to get to the time where we're forced to stop and actually just build it sustainably now? That's my wish for you, because I did it all wrong.
Yeah, because I do know that society puts their whole, at least for where I am right now, the whole college application thing. Right now, we're finding out where everyone is going. But for the longest time, everyone is like competing. Everyone is secretive about where they're applying, what they're doing outside of school. It's very, I'm better than you. Look at that. Like, and you want to almost compete with them because you want to get into the better college, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Society puts this pressure, and it has been getting worse over the years. I think they're forcing at least teenagers to act like, have so many accomplishments, like raise a bunch of money, start their own nonprofit, whatever, before they're 18.
That is so
And I'm like,
heavy.
what happened to being a kid?
I was talking to a friend, and her friends' children, they're growing up in Palo Alto, and so they're talking about how most of the parents there either Stanford professors or tech entrepreneurs. And so the pressure to achieve in that community is so extraordinarily high. They have one of the highest teen suicide rates in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, I have heard of this.
Wow. That's
like,
incredible.
what are we doing? Like this, and it's like I'm watching it happen, and I fortunately did not grow up in high school with social media, and I am watching your generation just like, I don't know how you're doing this. I'm so sorry that this is the pressure cooker that you're in, and the fact that you're doing so well despite all of this. Congratulations. Like also to mom, because you all are doing incredible.
Thank you. We're trying.
Barely treading water. That's like what everyone is trying nowadays. How are you?
At the very minimum, I'm like, okay, we're working hard, but we also have, as a family, scheduled time, once a quarter, to like for a week, or if she has spring break, which is a 2-week period, to really decompress, have fun, playtime, so crucial, so important. Like over the summer, we're already have like an entire month that we're going to be in Europe. My husband's originally from Germany, so we take that trip to visit family every year, and then use it to go and visit other countries and explore other things. So we try our very best to counterbalance. I wish we had more of it on a more regular basis. Like we try to inject like Pilates, during the week, at least twice a week, or boxing, or things that are fun for her to do, and where there's no competition, there's no achievement. It's just for the pure enjoyment of, I don't know, the high of being in a heated room and doing Pilates.
That's I go with like friends too, so that's
exactly. So she feeds her cup with with the friendship.
and we're
part.
both like dying. We're like, oh my god, we can't even do the movement. Yeah, it's a whole mess. Anyways,
so those things are important, and I hope that you continue doing them when you're in college. That you continue.
UC has a great rec center.
Now I wanted to perhaps steer the conversation, because you mentioned earlier a little bit. You talked a little bit about values. And, we have certain family values that we have instilled in Sophia. Like, for example, we are a family that believes that we were born lucky, that opportunities always find us, that when they find us, that we take bold action to meet those opportunities, that we act and embody integrity, that we don't give up at the very first sign of a struggle, and so on and so forth. But I said, those are family ones, and they will do her well in life, but she has to find her own. When you are working with teams, in corporations, or perhaps where maybe values are not as distilled, or maybe they are for the company, but the employee themselves, the team member, doesn't know what their own personal ones are. How do you help them distill what their own personal values are, to know whether I continue compromising on them for the sake of, looking good in front of my boss?
Yeah, this is such important work, and I don't think it actually takes that long. And it's something I feel like you all having those family values, that you're much further along than most people that I talk to. Whenever I ask someone, what are your values? People are like, I know my values. They're like family and doing the right thing. And then they kind of trail off from there. And so to have the specificity that you all do is better than most. And the questions that I always ask people are, how do you hope people talk about you when you're not in the room? At your funeral, which is hard to think about, but at your funeral, what do you hope to be remembered for? And what are your non-negotiables? And if you just sit and journal with those, then my instruction is always no more than 5. Like, do whatever you need to do. You can put things together or whatever it needs to be, but no more than 5, because our brains can't even remember more than 5. But I have and then once you have them, I showed you my picture earlier. This was a picture that my son drew for me of a flower, but mine are on a sticky note inside my flower. Is like literally making an artifact. Kathy Bullhouse, she's the CEO of Charter Next Generation. We did this exercise with her team, and she now has hers on her cell phone. And she showed me last time she saw me. She's like, right here on my screensaver. Like, I look at them every day, but constantly referencing them.
Yeah.
I like whatever it is that you look at on a normal basis. I sit here in my little home office every day. So mine are right there. Impact, exploration, joy, love, authenticity. Boom. And then constantly coming back to them. One of the better questions that I ask myself, this is especially true when I'm walking into a room where I am feeling insecure or doubting myself. This often happens for me if I'm walking into a room that is chock full of like older men. I like start having this anxiety around like, oh, what should I say and all the things. And I come back to my values and I choose like 1 or 2. And I'm like, what would it look like right now in this moment to move at the speed of joy or of exploration or of impact? Like, how would that actually change my behavior? Or how could that inspire me to show up in a different way? I used this at a table where I was sitting at ones with 7 older men. And I was like, curiosity, exploration. I'm going to go with that, and joy. And so I asked everyone at the table, tell me about one time in the last year that you felt truly joyful. And it stopped these men in their tracks. And instead of having the shallow, normal small talk conversation, I started hearing about people talking about their son's wedding and retiring from a board that they've been on. And people started talking about really meaningful things. And when you talk about those meaningful things, that's where you build connection. And all of a sudden, I left the table instead of feeling insecure, feeling like I knew these men quite a bit better and like we'd connected in a cool way. And so the way that you move through the world, constantly having ways, little like signals or something. I also have like a necklace that I wear that has my North Star on it, which I hold when I'm feeling uncomfortable, like always coming back to the values because they are what guide you.
Mm-hmm. And even great conversation starters for real deep, meaningful conversations, not just small talk, like, what do you do? Or, like the typical way, I
have a friend that's really good at that. Actually, I just sat down with him during my free period, like literally the hour before. And he's really good at asking those questions. And all of a sudden we start getting into a weird, deep conversation that I was not expecting. It happens every single time we sit down together.
So that's something that he's mastered. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like your family values, I'm immediately like, ooh, tell me about the last time you were lucky. Tell me about a bold action you took in your life. Like those, they inspire really cool conversations.
Sound like college questions.
Yes, absolutely. Well, one of them, it's kind of funny now since you're asking. I'm like, we are always kind of like manifesting parking spots.
Oh yeah,
I do the same
Born
thing.
Lucky. We like.
It's like
the most common way we use that is parking spots.
Yeah.
But we always tend to find one smack center, like right in the front of where we need to be. There's always a parking spot for us.
Or we're trying to get in an earlier flight and there is like a chance, we
walk on over there and
we feel very confident that, we're going to get a seat. And we normally do.
People. Same thing. Same.
Even if we're like number 6 or 7 on, on a waiting list, for some reason, 6 other people don't show up. And, they call our names, even though we're number 7, on that list. It's, I think, part of it is, you walk in that frequency and in that energy and it's self-fulfilling, it just happens. Yeah. But I love I love what you're basically right now conveying to Sophia is to use these values and basically go and ask people, like, what was the last big bold action thing that you took, and see what people say. And you are going to realize that with some people, you're probably more alike than you're different. Because I think sometimes the reason why we feel, like you were saying, a little bit uncomfortable walking into a room of, say, only men, which you're in finance, you will experience that quite a bit.
On the Instagram, all the people in finance, like my roommate in finance, she and a few other girls are the only girls I've seen.
Everyone else is like, our boys are attracted, to that major. And so, but she's basically then using this, this value to connect and to realize that perhaps you're not as different as you think, to these guys, even though they look different. Plus, there was something also interesting that that perhaps you could talk to Sophia. We don't necessarily talk about it a lot, except that perhaps she sees it embodied here in both working parents that are entrepreneurs that work together and, in the same businesses. This thing about both men and women accessing masculine and feminine qualities, and how basically maybe men are chastised for accessing those, and perhaps women not encouraged enough to use more masculine or what would be perceived masculine, but are really just exerting maybe mastery or, in a specific topic or knowledge in a specific topic. Maybe could you talk a little bit more about that?
No, of course. Like one of my favorite topics, which shows how much of a geek I am. But I call this holistic leadership. And this was a bunch of research I did for the book. When you look at all of the contemporary research on leadership, there's a bunch of new studies coming out saying like women are better leaders than men. And I was like, let's, I love it. Like I feel validated and it's great. And let's pull back some layers on that and understand what's really happening. And what is happening is that leadership is a giant array of the healthiest human character traits. And we have decided that some of them are, quote, masculine and some of them are, quote, feminine. And when we raise young girls, they're often conditioned to be, agreeable and quiet and sweet and compassionate and thoughtful and to listen and to be vulnerable. And young boys are often conditioned to be bold and aggressive and assertive and dominant and all of the things that we then take into the business world. And since men have been traditionally in positions of power, we started equating leadership with purely, quote, masculine things. And women started coming into the workplace who held feminine, but then they had to learn the masculine in order to be able to be successful in the business world. So they essentially were becoming bilingual. And now that we're seeing all the studies coming out saying that women are better leaders because they can speak the feminine and the masculine, when in reality, these are just human character traits that everyone, regardless of their gender identity, has access to. Yeah. Men can be compassionate and vulnerable and great listeners. And if we say that they can't, it's doing a disservice to them. And so it is really looking at the healthiest human character traits. And there's I have a list of about 16 of them that have feminine and masculine. And there are also toxic, quote, feminine and toxic masculine traits that degrade your leadership. And so the best leaders that I've ever worked with, and whenever I ask someone, tell me about the best leader you've ever worked with, 9 times out of 10, they talk about someone who empowered them, who they felt cared about them, who listened to them, who was supportive, gave them great feedback, was really strategic. This, when you listen to it, it's feminine and masculine. And so when we kind of degrade, quote, feminine skills as soft skills, I'm like, no, they are all leadership skills. There's not any that are better than the other ones. It is like speaking fluent masculine and feminine that has really elevated a lot of women leaders right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes if you have not exercised a muscle of those, masculine ones, it's a matter of cultivating those a little bit, to make sure
100%.
that, you access them both in the situations that you need. And you run teams of 150 volunteers for Blood Cancer United, and you've had to, quote unquote, come across as a little bit bossy, but is nothing more than just assertive, so you're on your way there.
Yeah.
You're on your way there, but also understanding, whenever anyone in your team had like a situation, there was one of her team leaders. She had another team member that wasn't really, contributing, wasn't really pulling,
Any weight.
And so helping her then come alone to the conclusion on whether to keep this team member or not, as opposed to dictating you should get him out. No, helping her come to that decision on her own. So you're on your way. You're like little bits. Perhaps I don't know that we use the languaging here where we say that, well, this is really conceptually what you've been doing. It's more like, okay, let's do and learn as we do,
That's
versus
like one of the best ways to do it. I used to not be able to give people feedback. I was like such a people pleaser and so worried about making other people uncomfortable that my employees, I never gave them direct feedback. And then I realized that that's just being dishonest. Like withholding the truth is being dishonest. And so I had to learn and cultivate the ability to give feedback and to give people direct conversation, and everything can be cultivated. There's not anything that you don't have access to.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's a statistic that you mentioned somewhere that 70% of workers say that their manager has a bigger impact on their mental health than a spouse.
That's insane.
That is insane. Yeah. That than a spouse or anything else. And so,
I mean, I could see how that
you haven't
could be
been
possible.
necessarily an employer, but you have been in a situation where somebody has looked at you for leadership, as a manager, of your little, group there of 150 volunteers. We only have a team of about 40 people. So Sophia has been managing more people than we have.
You've managed more people than I've ever managed. 150 people makes me like cringe.
I manage the people who manage the other people.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how we get to that. And
but I only correspond with direct, like I used to only correspond with maximum 20 people.
Yeah, but do you know how long it took us to learn that, from mom and dad? Like we had to, we didn't actually implement that until our second business. Our first business, we kind of like started, we were doing all roles ourselves, and then we started people to come and help us. And it wasn't until our second business that we're like, oh my gosh, let's hire the manager that goes and hires the people underneath,
Yep.
And so on and so forth. So you're ahead of the game, Sophia, in any case. But I was astounded by that the impact that we have on someone's personal growth and just mental health, and with mental health, physical health, because it's all one organism, and therefore that is then brought to their homes and to their families and so on and so forth, or the impact of that, to our clients, and how, especially for the team that is very, facing client facing. So, tell us more about that.
Yeah. I bring this statistic up so much because it's really about the responsibility that people have when they're put in positions of power. And so it's 70% of people say that their manager has as much or more of an impact than their spouse does on their mental health. And the parts of this that when you talk about the family, I think about, so both my mom and dad were small business owners, and my dad just had a tremendous amount of stress in his business. And he brought that stress home every day. And it impacts your children. It impacts your communities. It is something that you might not think people are picking up on. But like we talked about, our energy and what you're putting out into the world, your family, your community, the people around you pick up on chronic stress and frustration and anger. And so that I experienced that when I was growing up. And then I experienced it myself actually having a toxic boss. And if you've ever had a toxic boss, it is like soul crushing. And I remember I would say, and this was before my husband and I had kids, like 80% of the conversations that we had at night over dinner was me talking about something to do with my boss and another frustration and something else and anger and resentment and all this stuff. And also feeling powerless, like I couldn't change that situation. And when I resigned from that role, my husband, within like a month, he was like, "You're like a whole different person." And I was like, yeah, I feel like a different person because we spend them, like many of us spend the majority of our waking hours at work. And if we're trying to imagine a scenario that what we do for the majority of our waking hours and the people who are surrounding us don't impact the quality of our health and well-being, we are kidding ourselves. And the best example I've seen of this in my career is Barry Waymiller. I'll get through this example as quickly as I can, but they buy up distressed manufacturing facilities. And so in 2008, they bought a paper machine manufacturing plant in Phillips, Wisconsin. And we went and talked to the people on the floor, and they employ about 700 people in a town of 1,700. And they were talking about management before and management after, because Barry Waymiller is built on values and principles of helping people connect with their values and empowering people around their leadership and not having rigid hierarchy and all of these wonderful characteristics around giving people control and autonomy and making them feel valued, respected, and heard. He was saying before Barry Waymiller, one of the line leaders was saying, before Barry Waymiller came in, I was angry with my wife. I was argumentative out in our community, and I was resentful and never thought that I could be a leader. And then after they came in, the way that I was treated has made me a better spouse and father. It makes it so when I go to a bar and someone has a different opinion than I do, I will actually listen instead of yelling at them. Like I was just listening to the ripple effects of what happens when you give people dignity and respect and autonomy in the workplace, especially in manufacturing and these industries where people feel disenfranchised on a regular basis. It is a complete game changer for their quality of life and the way that they show up for other people. And I mean, honestly, I was like, this is like the key to world peace right here, is like giving people dignity back at work, because so many people are frustrated and angry and resentful.
It's amazing to hear that it's happening in an environment or in a workplace situation where if it's manufacturing of some sort, you would think that there are these metrics of like, you have to produce X amount of pieces per hour, you know, and that somehow in spite of still having those tangible results, that they're managing to make people that work there feel that way. So it's even inspirational for us because
if you're behind, someone's going to come yell at you.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that in, perhaps there's other culture or, work environments where
or someone comes yells at you before realizing why are you behind on that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Never mind.
And
I answered my own thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, trying to find out, okay, we have only so many pieces of the 400 that you're supposed to produce in an hour, and classically it would be like, okay, you would get dinged for that. But in this situation, I wonder how they approached it. Even like for us in our small business, we have a sales team, and I wonder how we could approach it better, because at the end of the day, the sales team needs to produce X amount of, revenue for the company in order for us to be like, we have like a little dashboard and we're like, is it green? Is it yellow? Or is it red? And certain metrics. But how even, those metrics, how can we make sure that we're not forgetting about the human? This is it's a good reminder. Thank you so much, Meghan, for bringing that up as to make sure that, that we're
have to talk about.
that we are approaching this, from a human perspective. Yeah. Okay. So our show is Becoming Wealthy. We always like asking our guests, what does wealth
mean to you?
Well, I love this. I have been thinking about it in terms of success. And so I will just say that wealth and success feel synonymous to me. And I would say that success for me means making a positive impact, doing things that light me up with people that I love, and having a immense quality of life where I feel joyful and filled with love.
Awesome. That's beautiful. That's very distinct, very different.
You're like, that's probably fairly different.
No, we've heard variations of that answer, but never as succinct.
Yeah, absolutely. We also like asking if there were, your top 3 pieces of advice for either a woman in her 40s, which is part of our audience, or a younger woman, in Sophia's age or in their 20s or starting out in a business venture. What would those top 3 pieces of advice be?
Oh my gosh, this is the first things that come up for me. One is do the work to stop outsourcing your self-worth.
Okay.
Do whatever you need to do to feel enough and whole as you are, without the achievement, without the titles, without the wealth, without all the things. Stop outsourcing your self-worth. Number 2, identify what it is. Identify, cultivate, and prioritize your joy. Because especially when you're talking about like Sophia, your age, and then 40s, there's like, you're so achievement focused at that your age. And then my experience in my 40s is like the kids, the job, the caretaking of older parents, like everybody else is coming in advance of me. And so prioritizing my own joy and what that looks like, and not letting it something that falls by the wayside. And I would say, think really hard about your definition of success, because I was handed a definition of success by like Western society pretty young, and it was very achievement based. It was all wealth and title and influence and power. And when it's pretty subconscious for most of us around how we think about success, but the way that you define success, honestly, it determines what you spend the majority of your waking hours on. It determines what you're willing to compromise and sacrifice. It determines your energy that you put out into the world. And if you're not intentional about it and just following the status quo, it will take you to a fairly unhealthy place. And so come back and really think about what your idea of success truly means, and a life well lived, and what your quality of life looks like, rather than how much money you want to have.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And as you were saying that, I'm like, okay, we need to do the little exercise of answering the question, how do I want people to talk about me in a room that I'm not there at, or at my funeral, and what are some of those non-negotiables? I think it's a good way. It sounds a little bit, I don't want to think about not being here, but it's important to give it some thought. Yes. Thank you so much, Meghan, for being here with us. And if anyone listening today would like to, get in contact with you, maybe, go get your book, This Isn't Working, or follow you on any of the social media platforms, where can people look for you and reach out?
Fortunately, I believe I'm the only Meghan French Dunbar in the world. So easy to find, MeghanFrenchDunbar.com, Meghan with an H. I occasionally post on Instagram. It is sporadic and ridiculous. And LinkedIn is where I'm constantly throwing up a lot of stuff. And so find me over there. I also have a podcast, which is being rebranded to Unbehaved. And season 2 drops tomorrow. So, all sorts of fun stuff.
Amazing. We are going to go check it out then, and, subscribe and start listening in and tuning in. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I love this show
today. And, if we're here for you for anything going forward.
Same. Same.
Thank you so much for being with us today in today's episode of Becoming Wealthy. And if this was good for you, a great experience, a great conversation, you could relate, you could resonate, definitely share with an important woman in your life. And we look forward to spending some time with you on another episode of the show. Thank you so much for being with us.